Wait, what? What are we talking about again?
I don't remember. Let's just talk about something.
Welcome to the Theology in Progress podcast, where our goal is to grow in Christ through every conversation. I'm Chris.
And I'm Josh.
And today we do not know what to talk about.
So we're going to talk.
So we're going to talk about not knowing what to talk about. Now, before you say, okay, well, this is either too meta for me and switch off or too boring, wait, I think we can salvage it. Because although we don't know what to talk about, it's actually a really good topic to talk about.
Okay, so here's what happens. You're in a small group setting, maybe even a Theo group or something like that. You all get together, and you go over the prayer requests that you might have real quick, and then after 5 minutes, you have nothing to talk about. Nothing's changed. Nobody's had anything amazing happen in their life. Nobody's had anything depressing or bad happen in their life, and you're just all there.
Yep.
Have nothing to talk about, and what do you do?
Yeah, and we've all been part of those small groups where it just kind of gets awkward there, and we're you know, it feels a little uncomfortable, and we're all kind of just end up waiting to go home, and you know, it's the benefit of having food at a small group, so at least you can
then
have...
you don't stuff your faces, and you're like, I'm not going to talk. I got food in my mouth.
That's right, and it does give you something to do. But, so I think this is kind of undervalued, especially in Pentecostal circles, right, or in churches. Any kind of church where you feel that you have to be busy all the time and constantly be talking or doing something, it's a really good practice to be able to just practice being. And then being with one another, I think, is so important too. So, so for an example, me and Josh, we've just been hanging out this evening trying to figure out what we were going to podcast on and, you know, get some things. And we had some topics and we were throwing them around, and nothing was just hitting us with inspiration. And then, so we were like, well, let's just hang out for a bit and see what happens. And so,
so here we are talking.
But there's a huge, enormous value in this just because we don't always have to be accomplishing something, quote unquote. You know, I'm a task-oriented person, so I tend to lean that way. Like, if I'm not accomplishing something, I feel like I'm being unproductive. So for me, it's a little counterintuitive, but prioritizing just building relationships is really the most important thing that you can do.
Which, for some personality types, is like the bane of their existence.
Oh, yeah, it's terrible.
Like, especially if you really thrive on order and having a purpose for everything and everything having a purpose and just total order to everything that you do.
There needs to be a beginning, middle, and end and a clear path to get there.
And once we're done, we're done.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, that would drive people, like that nuts. And other people just want to live in this zone all the time and never have a purpose.
That's true.
For some of the things they do.
We had a few professors that were like that.
Yeah.
And I remember doing our personality profiles, and I was the exact opposite of one of them. And so I loved the guy. Our personalities clashed a little bit, and I recognized that, okay. And he was one of those. He was like, I'd be okay with never doing an ounce of work. I just want to come and talk to people and hang out. And I'm like, that's all well and good, but that's terrible because I want to get something accomplished. I need to feel productive.
But sometimes it's good just rest.
It is.
And sit here and chill and be with each other.
And I have to kind of turn that into a task itself to think about it that way.
That doesn't destroy it for you?
No, it puts it front and center for me. To understand the importance of it. And that's really what it is. It's not like I'm just trying to get through some time, but it's placing it in an important category. Because when I sit down to do a task and I want to get something done, the reason why that's significant is because it became important. And so just prioritizing relationships, and I have to do this, especially, with my personal and family life, especially so if my brother or my mom or dad calls me who, I live a long way away from, out of state, and I don't get to talk to him much, or if I'm spending time with my wife, and I mean, we've done this for years now, it's, if I ever say to you or you say to me, no, I can't work tonight, I need to spend time with my wife, we just drop it. It's like, okay, that's got to take priority. And yes, it will set you back maybe in certain things that you wanted to do, whether, writing blog posts or getting podcasts, whatever it might be. I mean, we've been doing Theology in Progress for a while, and we've had plenty of setbacks. In the grand scheme of things, those relationships are really the more important thing. And so they have to take priority. Oh, yeah. And so, especially in a small group setting, or even in times like right now, it's important there is things that have to be done. We have to get a podcast recorded, so that's what we're doing. But we're doing it in a way that's very enjoyable for us, number one. But number two, we just have to, sometimes that rest and relaxation is important. So I think there's workarounds. You can be creative with it, and you can figure out workarounds, but definitely make those those relationships priority.
The small group I was part of back at the church I kind of grew up in, we spent several nights in that small group. Instead of having like a major discipleship message Bible study thing, we would just hang out and play games. And honestly, some of the times when we spent playing games and just hanging out with each other, we grew closer together than we ever did in the Bible study. Notice I said closer together, not grew, period. Because we do grow in the Bible study too, but you grow differently. And so, I mean, just playing those games, we got to see we got to learn a lot about each other's personalities. We got to learn a lot about the things that the things that we valued, and it was a really great learning experience.
And you get to laugh and play with each other, and
that's all good stuff.
It gauges a completely different side of the human experience that we like to forget about in the seriousness of doing Bible study and deep theological discussions. And obviously, we like to do that.
We do.
But again, if we're going to talk about being holistic people that God has created us to be, there's all different facets of it we need to take into consideration. I was talking with a guy the other day, and my experience mimicked his, but he was talking about church picnics. And for him, the church picnic kind of demonstrated or represented like the cornerstone of really what it meant to be in that church. So those were like the stronger memories than sometimes even like going to Sunday mornings, right? Because everybody was there. It was just kind of a big family, the potluck, everybody brought food or whatever. I mean, those are really the kind of times that kind of mold a church together as a family, even though you're quote unquote not doing anything serious, or nobody's necessarily being prayed for at the altar, a message isn't being preached, but you have time to just be together in community, and that's a lot of fun, and it can bind you together in a way that is different.
Yeah, you get to see the real people.
That's true.
Like sometimes when you're in a Bible study or when you're in a church service, I think we have certain faces that we put on. Like, in church, you of course go through all the worship time, prayer time, sermon time, and it's almost like you're in a totally different mode.
It is.
And then when you come out and get away from the church property or whatever like that, then
let your hair down a little bit.
Yeah. And so to get in an environment where your hair's already let down and you're just hanging out, eating food, playing games, people get to see the real you. And I think the closer you get in those kind of situations, the more beneficial the serious Sunday morning or Bible study times will be, because you'll see the real person and you'll see what they're really trying to do in those serious times.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, if you see somebody in your church who every Sunday goes up to the altar and just spends a ton of time on their face before God, if you don't know the real person, you have no idea what's going on. And then if you go and spend some time fellowshipping, playing games, talking, just having conversations, you find out that they spent a lot of time away from church, and now God's reviving an interest in just spending time in His presence. What they're doing has more value for you in your eyes. You understand them more.
Yep. I mean, you've built a ton of empathy for them. You can support them in prayer and whatever needs to be. in a way that benefits them. Because, again, maybe they're going to the altar. You might judge them, right? I mean, people in the church are never guilty of being judgmental, but
no.
So somebody goes to the altar every time. Like, we used to have a guy named Brother Al at our church, right? Sweet old man. And we used to kind of joke, in a reverent way, not in a make fun of way at all. But Brother Al would go down to the altar every Sunday. He was at the altar, and he struggled with a deep sense of guilt in his life about, never knowing whether he was saved or not. And to a large degree, kind of did feel like he had to get re-saved every Sunday. And I remember one time after he died, and made a huge impact though on all of us in the youth. And we were just talking about, like, Brother Al would go down to the altar even if the sermon was about homosexuality, right? And it was just because that's what he did. But in this example that you're talking about, rather than judge somebody and be like, oh, Brother Al's struggling with homosexuality, maybe you recognize this guy is really just hungry for a deeper intimacy, and the going to the altar represents that seeking for them. And so, I don't have to go pray for him to get over homosexuality now, but I can support him from a comfortable distance in a way that's, beneficial to him. And, he might not need a dozen people to go and lay hands on him every week. That's not
Maybe he just needs brothers and sisters cheering him on.
That's right. And then to have fun with him at the church picnic later. Yeah. And we have a hard time getting to know people like that, just in a traditional church service. What this also reminds me of, and what I realize that we want Theo Groups to do to kind of remedy this situation, is one of the reasons why the church environment might not be a conducive place for this to happen is because it's very one-sided.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you went through the liturgy of a service of you worship, you give, you listen, all that stuff is kind of happening to you. Now, yes, you do participate in it, but it's not as an open place for your free self-expression. Whereas when you're out as a group, say, having dinner afterwards or lunch or whatever it is, there is that encouragement for group involvement. Yeah. It's just different than a normal church environment.
It's really interesting that you brought that up. The thinking back over my experiences, I don't think I can say, even in the church that I kind of grew up in, spent 13 years at, got to know a lot of people really well. I don't think that even in that situation, I felt the same camaraderie with them in a church service that I did outside, just because the settings were just so different.
Mm-hmm.
And that could have just been me, but it was way different. And even at the church I go to now, I feel way more connected to the people of the church when we're doing things like a Convoy of Hope block party thing, because we're out there doing that together.
Mm-hmm.
And when we come to a service on Sunday morning, sure, I see people I know and we're glad to see each other and stuff like that, but that camaraderie, we're doing this together, isn't there.
Mm-hmm.
So that does say something about how we do church services on Sunday, I think.
I think so. And it's why I've always enjoyed the small group services, I think, because when I rededicated my life to the Lord, in high school and got into a small group, that small group was largely responsible. I attribute a lot of my staying power and my testimony to that small group, because it was in that moment, I was in a large youth group. We had 300 people. Great youth group. But it's hard to get to know people on a personable level. But in a small group setting, we were able just to be ourselves, right? We had the most amazing brownies every week. And so we could just have a time to sit and hang out and chat. And then we would go through a lesson and then we were able to talk about it. And then we were able to go outside afterwards and try to lift up and move my little Toyota Tercel car, and it was a good time. And so relationships just kind of were naturally able to form in that environment, and yet we were still able to take care of spiritual business at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really the kind of vision where Theo Groups is flowing out of, and that we would like to see, is that it doesn't have to be one or the other. Now, sure, even in a Theo Group situation, because those are the situations where we want to emphasize the seriousness of the moment. there may be moments where it's like, we shouldn't take care of serious business tonight. Like, at least try to force it.
Yeah.
And we can just hang out and be together, right?
Yeah.
And then, who knows? Sooner or later, you might find yourself in a conversation that ends up being a little bit more serious than what you intended on. So
that's happened to us quite a few times. We just start hanging out or talking about some random TV show that we were watching, and all of a sudden we're like, that really affects the way we look at this or that in the church. And
exactly.
have a lot of those conversations.
I think that's the way majority of our conversations start.
I wonder if the way people function like this is more of a preference for our generation, and maybe the generations that came before us didn't prefer it as much, or if they just didn't do it as much. Does that make sense?
I think,
like, is this a universal human need, or is it something unique about the culture of our generation that needs more of this growing together? And
I'd like to say it's both. And here's why. Because I don't think we have just automatically invented this human need. And the reason why I think it's both is because I saw this with my parents and with their friends. So they would do this, they would just take care of it at a different time and place. Where I think our generation, though, is unique in this is that we want to combine the two. We want to see these two things taking place together, not segregated out. Yeah. And so that does present a unique challenge for us because, well, anytime you try to go down a little bit of a new road, things are bound to get a little ugly. But our generation, the millennial generation, just doesn't seem to be comfortable with segregated ideas. We're like,
we have to see everything as like a web that is all joined together.
We want to see a holistic unity to the matrix.
Yeah.
And so slap it all together if we can. So I think that, because people have always needed those relationships and conversations with, each other. So I don't think that's a new thing. We just want to see it happen differently. Yeah. And I think that's probably one of the big reasons why we get the complaints of, church people being hypocrites. Is because they seem to act, from the outsider, they seem to act one way, like you said. We put our hair up on Sunday mornings, but then it's down in other times. And either that hair down is being misinterpreted as something else, or maybe some behavior does need to be maybe modified a little bit. Yeah. But I think that is a much more powerful witness to the world, is if we can invite them into the church and show them what Christ-like living looks like from a holistic perspective.
It can reverence, be fun at times.
It can be fun at times. And so, and we can joke and we can have fun, that's the funniest thing that I think is when you get complimented as a Christian as, man, you're kind of all right, you tend to have fun and be okay with certain stuff, right? And even if it's like language, where I've worked at some places where everybody just cusses like sailors, but I don't go running away from it and spurn them for using the language. And eventually, it has led me to probably most of the opportunities I've ever had to witness to people, is because people have noticed, one, I don't participate in that behavior. But two, I don't condemn them for it either, just outright, and say, oh, you guys are going to hell, or, any of that sort of stuff. But they're like, well, you're different from most Christians. You're able just to kind of hang out. But, why don't you cuss? That's weird. And I'm like, okay, well, let me tell you why, Yeah. It's a perfect open door for that situation. And so I think that's what we're looking for.
I think so, too. Good stuff.
Good stuff. See, you can start out not talking about anything in particular, not knowing what to talk about, and then you can end up taking care of some serious business later on.
And you end up with a podcast.
So.
All right, great conversation. This one's a little bit shorter than normal, but I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Please let us know if you have any thoughts or comments in the comments. And if you want to see more stuff like this, be sure to subscribe, and we'll make sure you stay up to date on all the podcasts and blogs that come out. And
if you guys have any suggestions for podcast topics that you would like to to hear us discuss or deal with, please let us know as well. You can send us an email at contact@theologyinprogress.com, or just let us know in the comments or on our Facebook page. And if you want to support what we do here, you can please like and share this. Getting this material out to as many people as we can is the best way to support the show. But we also accept money. And so if you want to support us financially, you can go to theologyinprogress.com/donate. Anything you give will go directly to making sure that we can continue to do what we do here.
Or food. I would take food.
Or food. If you want to donate food, email us and we'll work out.
We'll figure out how to do it.
We'll find out what that is going to be about. So
we got to find out if you can make good cookies or not yet.
There you go. That's we should go back. Man, this is going to totally. I don't even know if anybody's listening at this point, but we should totally have a cookie bake-off, and we can have people send it in. We can taste test cookies and put that on YouTube. That would be hilarious.
All right, you heard it straight from Chris's mouth. Send us your cookies.
Send us your cookies and we will rate them.
Yeah, by the end of the year, we will post on our Facebook page who has the best cookies.
Who has the best cookies. Yes. Contact us. We'll give you a shipping address to send them to if you really want to. And I don't know, we'll give you at least a free daily growth journal or something, and maybe some other material that we have at the time. So anyway, thank you guys so much. We will see you next time.
Make sure you're getting the latest updates about Theology in Progress by subscribing. Go to www.theologyinprogress.com/subscribe.